Hello and welcome back once again for this last session. I hope all of you have had a good lunch, a quick bite. So, we'll be starting off the second technical session, which would be chaired by Dr. Tabassum Jamal, Secretary, Zaheer Science Foundation, and speakers. Well, we have again fantastic lineup of speakers for you. We have Dr. Ram Budge, who would be speaking first, the CEO of Mobius Foundation, and followed by others too. So, Dr. Ram Budge, he's an environment and sustainability professional with rich experience of over 40 years in diverse fields with the government, university, systems, civil society, and the United Nations. He's currently, of course, like I mentioned, the CEO of Mobius Foundation, which is a Delhi-based sustainability think tank. He's been involved with several prestigious universities, institutions as guest faculty, visiting adjunct professor, both in India and abroad, like the MIT, the universities of Manchester and Bradford, and many others as well in India, the JNU, BHU, etc., and others too. Also, he's published over 100 research technical papers, articles in 15 books, and he also has, to his credit, many honors, awards, and recognitions, including the prestigious Science Academy Medal for Young Scientists presented by the former Prime Minister of India, Mrs. Indira Gandhi. So over to you and Dr. Ram, and look forward to an exciting session. And just a reminder that 10 minutes we start the touchdown. So just do keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is very important session. I think close to my heart. For many years along my career, I have always tried to be an educator, and being with UNESCO for almost 15 years, I had the privilege of interacting the education system globally. And I would try to touch very briefly some salient features, how education has been impacted and how it's responding to the global, this crisis. In fact, we all have been talking about the sustainability crisis, a planetary crisis, about climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and so many things. But COVID was one crisis which overshadowed everything. And globally, as per the UNESCO estimates, almost 40% of the global student populations was impacted by some 1.6 billion students. They were impacted by this COVID. They were out of their learning places or spaces, which is close to, if you consider the whole scenario, almost close to 90% of the world's total enrolled student population was out of classrooms. And this also impacted about 63 million teachers. And that's also is considered to be one of the, I think very few people know that we are into a global learning crisis. The crisis is not yet over, though to a certain extent, the pandemic has ebbed down. Of course, there are alarms in many parts of the world, but naturally for education, it's a crisis. I would say here that teachers are playing a very crucial role during this pandemic, and they have continued the learning. And basically, you might have seen on the social media hashtag learning never stops. That was a group of teachers. They had globally launched a campaign that, whether it's within the premises or within the precincts of the schools and classrooms, there is much to learn outside, and that learning should never stop. And there is another thing is that the issue of sustainability, which is at the core of every learning, and nowadays it's becoming very, very important because we hear the word sustainability everywhere. And how we can make education attuned to sustainability challenges, both in the education sector itself, as well as the overall, the planetary, to address those planetary crises. And the importance is how to build a more resilient teacher workforce, or educator workforce, because they are the only one who have responded so positively during this crisis. Of course, there are many who had both the questions of access as well as equity. I mean, for many teachers, it was a nightmare. Of course, for learners as well during that period. And a lot of lessons have been learned and is still learning. And of course, now it is gradually we are turning towards blended or hybrid learning and teaching. And when we talk about the sustainable development goals, one of the core issues is no one is left behind. So that question of inclusion and exclusion is also there. We are like in Movies Foundation since 2019. I am organizing an international conference on sustainability education with almost over 36 organizations, global organizations involvement, and many streams of education we are trying to integrate into it. And this also gels very well with the ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, which is 2030, that agenda linked with, it was launched in 2021 by UN agencies. And there is a goal also, and to transform education, and how we can ensure transformative learning for the people and for the planet, and for our survival and future of the coming generations. How, like, we all might have heard about the Greta Thunberg, when she called upon the student community to boycott classes, the Fridays for Future, at least one day in a week, devote to our future, because boycott classes, there's nothing to learn, because if whatever means our earth, what we will do if this planet is no more there. So that is how this whole crisis world is trying to address. And yes, the other thing is, I was talking about the inclusiveness, that education, of course, has become a very, very exclusive during days. You might have heard about so many tech platforms, edutech platforms. They have just come up, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And a privileged few are getting access to such kind of education. Whether they are trying to provide quality education, or that's a separate question. But this is the question of access and inclusiveness of education. When countries of all the world globally, they have signed that at least up to the primary and to some extent secondary education must be universal. It has to be accessible to each and everyone without any cost. Free access to education, that's a fundamental right. So in those scenarios, how we are going to address these kind of some of these issues, that is another question in the area of this crisis. The other thing is, of course, when we talk about the future of education and for the world of work, that means jobs, because we try to get educated, that's a different thing. The other thing is how to get jobs, because in post-COVID education, we have to think about the job-related courses, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, so many things, machine learning, blockchain, big data, cloud, data analytics, so many things which are like they have taken up the whole space of education, new skills, upskilling, reskilling, lifelong learning, and of course, digital economy. These are some of the challenges post-COVID education must address. And of course, our new education policy that was announced in 2020 is a welcome step to address such a kind of situation. And it has come up with some very long-standing, refreshing reforms, because normally education system in India is very rigid, and very often it's getting commodified every day. So, and these are so much structured. And again, this also, the policy also says that one size fits all approach, that standard and those rigid approaches. So how to make education liberal, means free and accessible to each and everyone. That is, I think, new education policy. There are indicators toward that direction, but we need to work very hard. I think digitally delivered classes need appropriate, of course, devices, and internet is one thing. The other thing is the curriculum and the resources, and very, very appropriate to the learners' needs, as well as the future of the workforce. So all these have, there are several master classes in India, which is, I think, try to become best in the domain. But let's think how these are going to respond to such situations. The MOOC, the massive open online courses, which have been on and need to be upgraded and strengthened. There are several other things. I think for the hope for the future lies in the youth. I mentioned about Greta. Then there is this our own Indian Lysipriya. Then there are several others. In the there is a whole movement by Amy Lucas on sustainability. Then Blue Allies. So we need many more voices from youth. So in our conference on 9th and September that we are organizing, we have almost a day devoted to youth as a youth conclave, and where, in fact, youth from all over the world, they are marching from Glasgow, where last conference, climate change conference, was to the Egyptian venue of the COP28, Sharm el Sheikh, 7,700 kilometers. So we will launch that also. Several other things we are working on it. This whole education scenario has become very dynamic, very complex. Try to do whatever little we can contribute in that direction. And let me thank Zaheer Science Foundation to organize this conference, this one day, very powerful conference, I would say, on such an interesting topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was very precise and very concise and dot on time. So, wonderful presentation and talk there. So, after Dr. Ram Buch, we have Dr. Riaz Ahmed, and he's a PhD in pure mathematics, and his research interests include function analysis, BCK algebra, economics, business, and education. And prior to being with the Emirates Aviation University in Dubai, he's been was with several other universities in the Middle East. And he has more than 20 research papers published in peer-reviewed international journals in different subjects such as mathematics, economics, education, and business. And he's also participated widely in discussions on technological disruption and managerial decision in business, and also given talks on technical disruption and its impact on teaching mathematics. So welcome, Dr. Riaz, and over to you, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Venki, for talking a lot of things about me. But I must be thankful to, first of all, Dr. Zahid Hussain, who picked me from Dubai. I think I am the only one who is getting advantage of this virtual platform. Has there been virtual platform, I could not have been able to attend this. So this is one of the advantage of the virtual platform, that you can gather people from anywhere in the world. So as we also, since morning I'm listening to many research scholar. I will say I'm really thankful to Dr. Zahid, who gave me this opportunity to listen and learn from these scholars. Okay, so some of them I must mention: Dr. Harsh Gupta, Dr. Prashad, Dr. Aslam, Dr. Moni. All of these, from all of their lectures, I have really learned a lot, and I'm really being introduced what is happening in India, which I have not been in touch from long time. So I can say that India is really much ahead from their discussion, what I come to know from the other countries. So as we know that the topic of our discussion is regarding the disruption caused by the COVID-19 into education. I have just made little bit change in the topic over here. I have been listening everything, like what the corona does the damage, and how the government level, teacher level, parent level, student level, they have intervened, and what was the output of this. I wanted to talk about this one, but everything has been told by my previous speakers. So I will be trying to be little different from this one. So my topic is going to be comparing the negative effects of interruption and the positive effects of intervention on learning during COVID-19. So I will be just talking here. First of all, I would like to give a condolence for those people who lost their life. This is the latest data since yesterday. Many of people who are attending here might have lost their kith and kins. I am really feeling sorry for them. 528,000 people have given their life during this corona. But as we know that, not only that one, 1.8 trillion hours, learning hours, has been lost by the students during the corona. But as we know that just remembering the sad things is not good, because that's why some poet has said that the yaad mazi azab hai yaro, yaad mazi azab hai yaro, ya ilahi chhin le mujhse hafza mera. So we have already seen that this kind of disruption has been taking place in future also, and in past also, but every time the preceding year has been added to the succeeding year all the time. So people has always been moving forward. So is the case what is I'm seeing, and I have been observing through the discussion of all the learned scholars, that how the India and other countries are moving forward in spite of they have such a setbacks. So a number of students affected by prolonged school closure, this has been already spoken by many people. I'm going to just skip it. Okay. Now also they have already discussed that how many people access and participate in the learning during the corona. Many people have already talked about. I'm going to skip it, but just few mention here: the access to and availability of learning materials and activities. Only 36% of all enrolled children receive learning materials or activities from their teachers. So this is the big data. I think most of this has been spoken out before my previous learners. Also, the internet and mobile connectivity in India, we are well aware of that. I think it will be repetition if I talk about this one. So children's engagement with remote learning, this is very important to talk about, because the sufferers are not the one who are living in the city areas. Sufferers are those who are living in the remote area. So the learning gap is likely to widen across high, middle, and low income family, as children from economically disadvantaged families cannot access while they are in the remote area. They are the one who are the most suffered the learning losses are more by them. So there is a report by Oxfam India indicated that children studying in government school where this is also important point to note down, that not every school children has suffered, but the government school children have suffered more. So that has to be kept in mind. A survey conducted by UNICEF in 6 states is talking about that students are falling behind compared with where they should be, including in social skill, fitness, job prospects. Some 60% of the parents of the students aged 5 to 13 and 70% of students from age 14 to 18 state that overall progress is significantly behind. So the same is the case with the other states. Now, I would like to mention the CEO, the Rukmini Banerjee's interview. She suggested here is the intervention come from, those were interruption. Now here is the intervention come from to recoup learning loss. Schools should focus on catch up, not curriculum. So she has given a suggestion, and it was really, it is worth understanding and following. I will not go in detail for that one. So now I again come back. As long as you learn, loss has been taken place. Here is a quotation. As long as you learn something from a loss, it is not really a loss. So these were the loss. Okay, we'll keep on thinking about this. We will never learn. So learning always come from losing something. This is natural phenomenon, and we have to go through that one. So comparing the negative impact from learning disruption to the positive impact from intervention, it has been conceptualized, and intervention should be like that high dosage tutoring is required. Summer learning programs has to be included, which many people have been doing. Reduction in class size is another suggestion. The extending the school day after the schooling, you can extend the day and teach the student to compensate their learning. So these were suggestions, and it has already happened that because of that, there has been seen to be change here, that it has gone here this much. This is about the graph. I would like to move forward here because time is constrained. The critical and urgent need to focus on learning recovery. How should decision maker and the international community respond to the growing global discussion crisis? This is the most important thing. I am going to give little more. I am going to suggest something different which no speaker have talked about. If you want to get the learning loss compensated, you have to empower the learner. This is the new terminology coined by the international community. If you are empowering, not everything to be done by the administration, not everything to be done by the teacher, not only by the parents and society, the learner must be empowered to take their self-responsibility. And for doing this one, we have to create a learning environment. And that learning environment should be a digital one. And how to empower the learner? These are the few points I would like quickly spell it out. First of all, help the student to find their passion. This is very, very important. If you want to empower the learners, you have to create passion in them. If you could not create passion in them, they will not take the responsibility. And if they don't take the responsibility, they are not going to learn better. So recognize the students, students who participate and share their thoughts. Also recognize their ability, and you can share their thought to the other to make him feel good. Personalized lessons, like in the class, there is a different type of students. You cannot give same lesson to each and everyone. So you have to personalize the lesson. This is very, very important. And also a student must be encouraged through debate and expression of ideas and opinions. Brainstorm with the students. You must discuss with the students. Let them participate. So it will help them to become self-learners. And you should be, in that case, it will not be the class like the way the people are listening, they are sitting silent. There will be chaos in the class, but you have to be patient in order to let them take the responsibility, help the student determine. And also, this is extremely important point, because now we have to design our curriculum. Like Dr. Ram Bhuj said that curriculum should be now according to the digital learning platform. So it should be student must be given a democratic right to say. They should have a say in their learning, what they are supposed to learn. So they must be given they must have a choice to what they are going to study. Also in order to do that, you have to be empathetic and resilient to make them achieve this ability to become empowered. Promote leadership and explore different forms of it. Help students. So these are the few things that you must. This will give the students empowerment. And if the empowerment is done, but here comes the why we want to do the empowerment and why. What is the means to do that? As I'm saying, I have already said that this should be through digital learning environment. And why digital learning environment? As we see that God has given us eyes in the forefront. Why not other place? God has given eyes to see forward. So now where our students are there, we have to prepare them for the 21st century skill. This is going to give a lot of problem for all the countries, because the requirement for the 21st century is completely changing the syllabus and everything is going to be changed. We have to prepare now. We have to see forward. So 21st century skill can be achieved through the digital learning environment. It cannot be done the way we have been practicing before. So these are the important requirements: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Look here, they are not mentioning about the course. They are talking about the skills. So now the education is going to be about the skills, and we have to make our provide the student those skills. So a digital curriculum should be on the Moodle, as the sir talked about. Dr. Zaheer Hussain also pointed out the digital learning environment. Moodle will help the learning management systems, and mobile device they should be given, which has some time. So personalized learning. Now personalized learning is very important. Students should learn, as I said, that if they are empowered, they will be taking the responsibility to learn by themselves. And this learning should be also assessed. So if you know nowadays what is happening, the student goes to home, goes to the teacher, give them homework. He goes to home, he doesn't understand, he closes the book, and next day he goes like as he doesn't know, he wants to skip the class. Many things happens. But if that course is designed in such a way that he gets the immediate feedback of whatever the work is done, then he will be getting more motivated to learn. So we should design the course in such a way that the teacher will post the course in such a way the student does the work and get the immediate feedback. If they get the immediate feedback, he will be enthusiastic to learn more and more, and that is the way he will get more empowered. So it is already why it is empowered.
Thank you.
Yeah, just few things. So a learning management system together with software, other tools and integrates, these are the way you can do. I would like to demonstrate something here. This is the main way to achieve that one. So there are three things. So the empowerment learner should be done through three things. There must be peer involvement. Teacher will be there and the students. So this is the cycle. You can say here the teacher will create and manage, then deliver and display, go to the students, so they're collecting data and then analyzing data, then give the feedback. If all these things happens, then you can see that students will be motivated to learn, and they will take the responsibility. A lot of problem will be minimized from teacher side, from parent side. So I would suggest that a digital learning environment should be created. Now I give an example of as you know that my good introduction is that my name is Riaz and I teach Riyaziyat, which is called mathematics. So I will like to give example for a mathematics. The teacher will post a question like this one, where he's asked to find the area of this shaded area. So he will ask the question, he will make a formula first of all, and then he will be asking the student to change the values of A and get different areas. Now he will be suggesting in the next question how to get this area by another different formula. And this is how the student will be taking responsibility to learn by themselves. And if they commit mistake, it will be immediately, he will get the feedback. So this is one of the best way of empowering the student for their own learning. I suggest that everywhere this should be taken place as early as possible. So I just gave one example, so this can be done in any way. So I have to here, I think I will just give you some concluding part. So throughout this process, what I have said, that the teachers are more responsible to create the curriculum in a way that student can follow it and solve it and get the feedback. This will be the assessment on one type. And finally, he will be, when he will appear for the midterm and the final exam, he will be getting good grades. Okay, so through this one, what I have already shown you, this is the process. This is the process which will make it formative assessment for the students. If the students are assessed, every time he make mistake, he got the feedback, then teacher in a learning process is going to be much better than, and it is much required according to the 21st century school is needed. So I think that every government, every institution should think of adopting digital learning. However, there can be starting point for the research about learning analytics. Maybe there are some defect and difficulties will arise up. The scientists and the educationists should take up the course to find or make it more smoother and better. But this is the only way we can prepare our student for 21st century skill, by using my eyes, which is at the forehead, to see forehead. So with this, I will be like to thank you all for giving me a chance to speak about. And I was thinking that there may be a question, so but I would like to over to Mr. Venki. I am done over here. Now you can move. I think I have taken appropriate time what I was asked to do. So I made my work here. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to Dr. Zaheer and all the listeners who are listening to me. I'm really feeling happy to be with you all. So thank you very much. Over to Venki.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riaz. Pleasure to have you over all the way from the Middle East, taking out your time and for sharing such an insightful and interesting talk. And questions, yes, to the audience, a reminder again, if you do have any questions, please post them in the Q&A box for our speakers, and we'll be happy to take them on towards the end of the session. And up next, we have our next speaker, which is Ms. Anupama Ramachandra, who's the principal of Delhi Public School, Electronic City, Bangalore, since 2014. And she has over 2 decades of experience in teaching at various levels, ranging from kindergarten to senior secondary level, and she believes that education must result in empowerment and responsibility. And she has postgraduate degrees, both in English literature and education, and her pursuit to inculcate appropriate language skills in her students encouraged her to become a University of Cambridge certified oral examiner for international English assessments. And she's also had a rare honor of getting a scholarship for the Fulbright Classroom Teacher Exchange Program instituted by the Department of State, United States. And she's a speaker, moderator, anchor at various seminars, panel discussions, events on different dimensions of the education, and teacher training, community engagement, inclusive education, development of sustainable curriculum design, and supporting teachers for professional growth are areas of interest. So pleasure to have you with us, and over to you for your presentation.
A very good afternoon to all of you, and thank you, Mr. Venki, for that very generous introduction. I have been a part of this event right from the time it started in the morning, and I must say more than an opportunity for me to share my experiences, I think it has turned out to be an opportunity for me to add on to my experiences that I can take forward as an educator and an educational administrator. And I have been listening to different perspectives and different opinions, But I think the bottom line is that all of us are speaking while reiterating the extent of disruption in education due to the pandemic. I think the brainstorming that is happening here about how are we going to take this process, the teaching learning process forward from where we stand today, the post-pandemic. And since I am into education of children, the grassroots level, I would say, I would like to focus my discussion on how do we bridge the gap and get back to normalcy post-pandemic. I would like to focus on the role of educators in doing so. So if you will allow me, I would like to share a presentation of mine. I guess the presentation is up on view mode.
Yes, it is.
Yes, thank you very much. All right. So March of 2020 had a big surprise, or if I may call it, a rude shock for all of us when we were forced to shut the doors of the school for all stakeholders. So it was not only the students, but the entire community of the schools, right from the students to the staff members and the management and the community. The gates of the schools were locked. Little did we know that this was not just a temporary event, but something that would go on for 2 long years. 2 years seems to be short, but if we say about 700 days, we realize the extent of the pandemic. And we were forced to think of a bridge gap arrangement to start off with. And then, of course, we had to all put our heads together to think of a sustainable system that would ensure that the students would not stop learning. So we saw a lot of them talking about the schools have closed, but the learning has not stopped. Well, now that schools are reopened and the children are back at school, it is time for us to introspect now whether learning actually happened during these 2 years. I will not answer that question because I know there are a lot of educators here. So it is just a question for all of us to just introspect. And now that we have the children who have gone through the so-called learning that we were talking about during the last 2 years, are we happy with the effect that or the impact that we were able to make with the online classes or any other strategy that the schools did take up? That is something for all of us to think. So starting off from there, this has been repeated many times from the morning, just to reiterate the impact of the pandemic, especially on the educational sector. I just have some data which is taken from a UNESCO website where it says the impact of the pandemic was much more than anybody can imagine. And the effect of the pandemic did not touch just students who were away from the school, but it also did impact the staff members, the educational administrators, the management, and the community at large. And of course, the nation in general was impacted. Now, how do we know what is the extent of the pandemic on schools? Well, just like when we took the when we were all given shots of immunization against the pandemic, when we asked what would be the after effects, they said only time can tell. So I think this holds good even for education, because now that children have come back to school, when we are interacting with them, we really don't know how far the impact of these 2 years of the pandemic has gone and how it has affected the learning curve of students. I think only time can tell, because it is in some schools like ours, it is we haven't gone through even one academic year after the pandemic. So we really have to wait and watch as to how far the pandemic has affected our students. And also we all know the truth is it has impacted different pockets of India, different students in India in many unique ways. So we can discuss that later. So we all know that now students are back, and still the fear of the pandemic is still lurking. And we are insisting the students should follow all the protocols at school, and then they should always be masked. And we do have some cases of students who are becoming positive, not only with pandemic, but with other infections also, because all of us have become very vulnerable to infections. So the school is not running at full speed, I would say, due to many reasons like this. Moving on, before I talk about the role of educators, let us quickly look at what were the visible effects of the pandemic on education in general. And I'm speaking about this out of my own experience in our school, and of course our sister concerns. Our school comes under the KK Educational and Charitable Trust banner, and we have about 6 schools that run under our trust. And with the experience of all our schools put together, I would like to quickly discuss what were the impact or what were the, how did the pandemic actually affect all of us at schools. Firstly, the negative impact. We all know from morning we have heard about the digital divide, how the technology which we were forced to adapt actually divided the student community. We know very well that many students in rural areas where they did not have access to either internet or electricity were cut off from the process of education completely. It is a myth that in cities like Bangalore or any other metropolitan cities, all the students had access to online learning is a myth, because even in our school, there are quite a few students during the last 2 years. Either parents took them away from our school saying that they were not able to help the child with online classes because probably they did not have the space in their house that all the people there could have their own devices and sit to access the classes. Some of them even said that because of some, they were affected themselves by the pandemic, there were deaths in the family, and for many other reasons, there were a few students even from schools like ours who came and conveyed to us that they were not able to access the online classes. So there was a digital divide where like the haves and the have-nots. This was like people who could access education through online resources and the ones who could not, especially during the peak of the pandemic. And because of that, there are some students we know who completely dropped out from the system. And there was a deterioration in their physiological health because either they were affected themselves, the students, or their family members. And one thing that all of us were faced with was a sharp decline in the number of people who decided not to continue as teachers. So the attrition rates were really high during that time. And we had to struggle to get teachers who could adapt to the online way of teaching and continue to be teachers. And I think that plagues us even now. And of course, mental health became more pronounced. All these years, a subject that was a taboo. People did not want to talk about mental health so much, but it became very pronounced during these years of the pandemic. And the relationship of family members who were all cooped together in the house for long hours and for limitless days did not get better, it only got worse. So we see the aftermath effects even today, where children are not able to communicate with parents and they don't agree on anything. So there was a lot of social disconnect because of that, because children, it is very natural for children to connect with peer groups and human beings. but we were in fact educating them not to touch anyone or not to go near anyone. So there is a true social disconnect, and of course the learning gap that all of us have been talking extensively about. But I always believe that disruption always has double impact. Of course, there are negative impacts, but sometimes we fail to see the positive impacts also. So quickly, something that I have felt is that we as educators were forced to become tech savvy. So today, I can very proudly say that all the teachers of my school are equipped to not only handle online classes, but also to assess the students online, to conduct everything online, because in the last 2 years, we did everything under the sun, right from elections of the student council to celebration of national days, to inter-school competitions, parent-teacher meetings, everything has happened online. So it has made the educational community more tech-savvy, I would say. And communication has improved to a great extent. When I say communication, we know that talking to each other, maybe there is a decline, but non-conventional ways of communication has certainly increased. And the teachers and the parents know how to quickly get in touch with each other if there is any issue that is bothering them, either through email or WhatsApp groups, or so many ways of communicating with each other. One thing that came up very, very nicely, I would say, it evolved nicely, is collaboration. Now we know, sitting in any corner, like how we are having this event just now, we are all sitting in different parts of the country and the world, and then we're just collaborating for a common purpose. So that is something that has happened in schools also. And now, without wasting any time, anything and everything we are able to achieve through collaborations, because we know how to connect. We have learned how to make use of minimum resources for maximum impact, because during the pandemic we had nothing, barely anything or nothing, but we were able to plan our classes beautifully. So I think now we value resources, and we also know how to use them. And working group again is echoing with collaboration. We know how to manage our time very well, because now we know that if the session is for 30 minutes, we have to finish it in 30 minutes, otherwise we will be thrown out automatically. So we are more conscious of how we use the time that we have. And because of the fact that we were able to get in touch with children individually at our own time, right? Because every time when we talk about differentiated instructions, time is always a constraint. But now teachers can get in touch with students with special needs even after school, spend 31 minutes with them so that they are also helped, because of which I would say remediation and scaffolding is happening very, very beautifully. So moving
Request you
on,
to kindly conclude. Thank you.
do I have 5 minutes to conclude?
We have a couple of minutes.
Okay, yeah, okay, I'll conclude. So now how do we take this forward? The only way forward is that we recognize the state in which the educational system in general is, and of course how our students are doing it. And as teachers, we have to assess where our children are with their learning, with their emotional stability, with their social connect. And then I would love to say that we can all work towards resolving it. But I think a good first step would be that how do we mitigate that? These are some of the strategies that we have tried in our school. So I'm just sharing it with you. So I would like to summarize it, saying that we cannot go on with our conventional methods anymore. If at all the last 2 years has taught us anything, it has taught us that there are 100 ways of doing the same thing. So I think that we have to relook at the way we plan our classes, we plan our syllabus, we are using our classrooms, and as far as possible, because the children have come back from 2 years of almost sedentary lifestyle, I think we have to give them breaks, include movement in between, all our post-scholastic activities like dance, music, yoga, drama, theater, gardening, pottery. I mean, we are doing it all just so that there is a break from the monotony. And what can teachers do? They can be role models. They can show children how we can be honest in the face of challenges, how we can be empathetic to their unique situation, still be calm and caring. And of course, I would like to end my discussion here by telling the teachers that first of all, you need to take care of yourselves, because we all know that we cannot pour from an empty cup. So do take care of yourself first, physically, emotionally, mentally, and you have to ensure that you should always be conscious that you have also come back after 2 years of the pandemic. So you are going through all that a student is going through. So try to connect socially with your colleagues, take care of your health, be comfortable with your strengths and weaknesses. And now that your children are back with you, try to spend as less time as you can with your social media. Try to balance between relationships and the curriculum. Choose your battles, and of course, know your limits. We are not Superman and Superwoman, so we should know where we have to stop and ask for help. Help can come from principals, come from parents, it can come from the community, it can sometimes come from students also. So please do ask for help. Do not burden yourself with things that we can never achieve, no matter how much of effort we put in. So this is my last slide, that although I started off my presentation by saying, what do educators do to get back to normalcy? My question at the end would say that, do we want to go back to normal, or do we want to redefine our roles so that we can reimagine our classrooms? Thank you all for your patient hearing. I would like to especially thank the Zaheer Science Foundation for giving me this opportunity to present my experiences on this, and a special note of gratitude to Dr. Zaheer Khan for specially inviting me to be part of this very enlightening discussion. And a big, big thank you to all the teachers across the world who ensured putting their life at risk, putting everything at risk. They ensured that children of the school were somehow connected to the process of learning and brought them back to school no matter what. Thank you all once again. I would love to take any questions and suggestions based on what I said. It was wonderful being part of this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that lovely presentation. In fact, I too was inspired to go back to school with all the yoga and the dance and everything that you were talking about. Somehow I just realized that that's something that's been missing for some time, although I do yoga, but yes. And another very important point that you touched upon, that you cannot pour from an empty cup. Likewise, you should not attend a session with an empty cup. So please fill up your cup and have a healthier choice. You could use buttermilk or apple cider vinegar, lemonade, whatever works for you. So we have two more speakers now for this session. And up next is Dr. Pragya Verma, who's currently teaching at the Nahar International School, Mumbai. I hope I've got the name right. And she is a PhD in molecular and cell biology, in which she received in 2014. From the School of Natural Sciences and Mathematics, University of Texas at Dallas. And her research work mainly focused on the heat shock transcription factor. That's gone a little above my head, but then I'm sure that sounds very interesting, whatever that is. So her research work resulted in 3 publications in the areas of stubble burning, antimicrobial resistance, and bioplastics. And she has won international projects organized by Govt Institute and TGELF India, targeting issues such as plastic pollution and sustainability. And she's also organized donation drives, bake sales, very interesting, charity walks and runs to support non-profit organizations such as Goonj. So, and of course, not to miss out and not to leave out that her core strengths include independent research design and multitasking. So she encourages students to think out of the box and seek unconventional solutions for challenges faced by the society. So welcome, the floor is all yours, and look forward to your talk.
Hi, Venki. Thank you. Actually, me and Aisha will be presenting the talk together. So we both being from the teaching background. So we both are going to, we are going to do the talk together. So if you want, you can introduce Aisha too, and then we'll start
Yes,
the talk too.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing that out, and certainly would not want to miss out on Miss Aisha as well. So she is teaching currently at DPS International, New Delhi. And she has rich teaching experience from DBS Bangalore for 5 years. So that's that. And also she's also pretty much involved with voluntary, I think, activities, and works with NGO named Gunjan Foundation. And she's been working with them for over 3 years now, organizing various fundraising events and blood donation camps. And she's also actively involved with the vocational center, which is established to provide vocational training to women. And she's also a sub-editor of the school biology magazine, Life Spectrum. So welcome aboard to you as well, both of you. Over to you for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Venki. So I'll just start sharing the screen. I hope the presentation is visible to everyone. So as the day has passed by and we've talked about how COVID-19 has actually impacted teaching and learning, and ours actually being one of the last talks, we are still reiterating the same fact, talking about how teaching and learning has been affected in the time of COVID-19. So, when COVID-19 pandemic came in, everybody was worried about, let's talk about health issues which are there. And, economic global crisis is something which is coming in. Education was one of the important things which was talked about and is still talked about. There might have been a pause in certain areas, but there is one place, whether it was school education, whether it was, at primary level, middle school level, high school level, or whether it was a college level, everything took a toll. In fact, we all know even small coaching centers which used to run for simple education things had to be shut down considering COVID. Students had to go back. But that did not mean that, the teaching would stop and the learning would stop. And would India bring an end to entrance exams for a year? Or would we stop, will kids just say in their CVs that for the next 1 year we did nothing, or is 2020 2021 like an empty space in our CVs? No child can actually show that. And yes, the learning did continue. So that's what our talk is going to be all about. We are going to reiterate the same thing, how the COVID-19 as a pandemic affected the education. Education being affected was still continued, but how was it continued? There are a number of portals which were used. Both of us being teachers actually used different portals for different standards for parents. How those were used, what glitches did we face, and how did we adjust to that? Now, obviously, as ma'am pointed out in the previous talk also, now the kids are back to school. So still things have changed. Kids are still wearing masks, whether it is in school and colleges. Some are wearing, some are not, some are taking off. While we guys are teaching, we start with wearing a mask, we get tired, we take out the mask. But still the COVID-19 pandemic is somewhere there in our memory and still stays with us. So that's what is there. Last but not the least is a pandemic left us, but it has left its footprints. So we have to take away something from that and use it so as to better, to lead to the betterment of our own education system. So I'm just giving you simple statistics which have been covered since morning. This is a survey done by World Bank, which they clearly stated that any crisis that ever comes up in any pandemic, till date, COVID-19 pandemic led to multiple crises, but the biggest crisis all around the world, which was in this century, was the education crisis, which we never faced. Schools were closed. And here I mentioned there's something as learning poverty rates. Learning poverty rates is referring to that already learning was much more lesser all around the world, whether it is India, whether we are talking about the South Asian part, whether we are talking above the South Asian area or any other area, the poverty rates already existed. But COVID-19 actually increased them by 10%. There were increased dropout rates, which have been mentioned in talks since morning, that kids obviously dropped out. There were personal reasons behind it. There were financial reasons. Kids' families did not have places to stay. So obviously they had to move out. As a result, what is the effect? What does this generation, we say that they won't get the education. But if you look at the monetary terms, we look at money in the end. So we ended up, most of these kids, because of the lack of education they are suffering, it will be a loss of about $10 trillion in life earning. So we would have expected them to earn because of the education they are lacking. That 10% change leads to a $10 trillion loss. So how much education can shape an individual? And here we are not talking about education for a person to have a PhD in the end. We are talking for a person to have right to basic school education, even just till 8th grade, just till 5th grade, to understand the basis of what education is. So with statistics, I pass on the stage to Aisha. So she'll be talking about how we as teachers were able to bring about a change and what did we adapt, because we had to change within a span of 20 days. But education, and mind it, before I pass it on to Aisha, we went into a lockdown in March. Sessions started on 1st April. So were we supposed to tell the students that you are going to a new class or you're going to a new session? Sorry, we do not have a means to teach you. No, we could not say that. So we had to adjust during the time when, teachers were actually supposed to take a break because exams were done and they were supposed to go. But as they say, we had to move on, and there's nothing like break that happened, but every teacher did it with that much encouragement and happiness, I think. So the stage is over to Aisha.
Thank you, Pragya. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aisha Khan, and today I'm going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on education. As we all know, the world of education has been evolving since time immemorial. COVID-19 gave teachers and students an opportunity to explore online education. And trust me, it wasn't easy. All educators were in the soup, as transitioning to online teaching in such a short span of time was really tricky. One day we were in school and the next day the whole world was flipped upside down. Using technology in the day-to-day business of keeping in touch with students, sending reminders, sharing pictures and videos, setting assignments and tests had to be rethought for online classes. I'm a middle school teacher teaching English to grades 5, 6, and 7 at DPS International, Delhi. Technology and audiovisual aids like PPTs, YouTube videos, WhatsApp, and other such digital content were mere supplements and add-ons in my classes. But during this extraordinary situation of complete lockdown, these technologies became the primary enablers and not just add-ons. Needless to say, online teaching and learning had many challenges. First was neophobia, fear of new things, closely followed by technophobia. We all know teachers are complex humans in the sense that while we are creatures of habit, we also enjoy a lot of challenges and adventures. Initially, I was not very comfortable handling technology. This first challenge was definitely overcome within the first few days as I got used to the modalities of teaching virtually and delivering classes in my Google Classroom. Our school's computer and IT department definitely helped a lot. Being comfortable with WhatsApp, groups were formed and rigorous trial sessions were held. Teachers taught fellow teachers before exposing themselves to students. I tried my level best to use the software selected for the online lessons and had trial classes. This created an atmosphere of comfort in handling technology. When everything was going smoothly, there were days when I faced internet connectivity issues. As my students were waiting, I could not connect. I felt really cheated on those days, and my colleagues shared that they also had similar problems. I think this was one great hurdle for both teachers and students, especially for those from the disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds. I understood that one could not rely completely on technology. To a teacher of English, teaching, practicing, and assessing the 4 language skills during online classes was a major concern. Reading, listening, and speaking were comfortably done by my students, but teaching writing skills and coaxing them to write was the toughest. Next challenge was the lesson plans and what educational aids to be used and how to incorporate them. As we all know, there is an ocean of online sites with numerous exciting lesson plans and activities on the internet. It was difficult to choose the right thing, but it was even more challenging to mold it according to the needs of the students. We had to consider our own comfort level too. Keeping in mind the invisibility and lack of visible body language to gauge the mood of the students, teachers had to rely on frequent feedbacks. We used Google Forms that helped us in creating entry cards through which we were able to get attendance and figure out the interesting and difficult parts of the day's lesson. This, I feel, was the best time to explore and use the interesting online educational tools that were available. Personally, I'm a huge fan of Kahoot. To maintain the interest level of my students, I created a Kahoot quiz in one of the lessons and set it as a challenge to the students. Not only was it an enjoyable experience, it broke the monotony of online classes, as well as helped my students to comprehend the lesson in a fun way. I started exploring other things as well, which I had never thought of. For instance, class notebook, where all notes, extra questions, online resources could be maintained for further use. In classrooms, students enjoy and remember the nuances of a teacher, the gestures and expressions, all of which add to the whole experience of classroom teaching. The major challenge the teachers faced was to handle the lack of these things. Clear set of instructions was the need of the hour. Everything had to be clearly stated with no ambiguity. Teaching in a classroom and teaching from home are 2 different things. Needless to say, it wasn't easy to maintain the work-life balance. Managing the household chores as well as getting ready for online classes was quite taxing, but we teachers are superhumans. Sorry, Anupama, I'm saying that. We made sure that our students didn't lose out on their studies due to the extraordinary situation of the lockdown. Last but not the least, grading assignments and conducting online assessments was also very hard. However, online assessment platforms like ThinkMerit and Kami, which is an annotation and markup tool, proved to be absolute lifesavers. Before I forget, most of the students were also very helpful in this online journey. Being active netizens, they had taken to online teaching very comfortably. During the classes, they were a great help, guiding me when I got stuck and helped me handle any technical problem that I faced. I truly believe that a teacher must always be a learner. So I was very happy for this role reversal as they taught me and I learned from them. The illiterate of the 21st century, Toffler said, will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Now I request Dr. Pragya Verma to take over from here. Over to you, Pragya.
Thank you so much, Aisha. So Aisha actually talked about, how individually we moved from one portal to another. I remember the days when me and Aisha were struggling with classes and we were switching from either Zoom, then moving on to Microsoft Teams, and then moving on to Google Classroom to understand how, each of the portals are actually working during this time. And we remember, as teachers trying to help each other, and kids would always be a step further than us. They would know how to move on to that portal and they would always be there to give us that one suggestion that, okay, you should be using this particular platform because it's much more better. So moving on to something, as we are adding on, this was more of our personal experience. But if we look at the statistics, which is done by the World Bank, which is done by UNESCO, it actually shows us that learners all around the world, when I said that the monetary impact would be $10 million. If you look at the fact, it really compares with the 1.38 billion learners which were affected. Schools were closed. We say it was online learning. We as teachers have seen that it went to online learning. Everything was, there were good points and bad points to it too. But so we'll try and talk about how both the things can be utilized for the betterment. So here, if you just look at mere statistics, schools closed. For that 1 month, learners were adjusting and so were the teachers. That was that adjustment phase. It's like when a school is when a child is made to go in nursery, they have that initial adjusting time. And that's what we teachers and learners were all facing at that point of time. So just giving up scenario, Aisha actually mentioned about some of the things which were used by our school which had the finances. What about, let's say, government schools? What about universities which were there? They had their own ways. So there was radio and television education which was provided. A lot of television programs, YouTube links were given to students of government schools. In fact, for primary for primary classes of most of these government schools, they were take-home assignment packages which were given to them. Means we all had, we all did not have help, but whatever help was at home, we came to know from them that, those kids were given assignment packages to do. And imagine those kids who were mere 5 to 6 year old had to finish those packages, and they did not have help from their parents. Their parents are house helps. They don't have the education background. So it was not easy for these take-home packages. On paper, they were given to these kids, but were they learning from them? That's the big question which was there. Online instruction courses and resources which were there were available for us. We did use them, and so did our kids. So these are a little bit of statistics talking about the fact that as these things were happening, so were the teachers. Most of the teachers were actually teaching during the day, and in the evening they were actually attending training and workshop to understand each of the system, because they would not realize that I actually put my mic on mute and suddenly I pressed a button and it was on unmute. So a lot of things had to be learned during that process. So the teachers were actually working full time, and I actually come to a statistics much more later. So this is just a comparison of how education was affected throughout. So if you look at this graph, it actually talks about the different income groups, how the lower class, the lower middle, upper middle, and high were affected. So if you actually see, the online learning graph for high is very good. They had all the online resources. But if you look at the low and the lower middle, the middle class group which was there, most of the access they actually got was for the no distance learning plan. That is the take home packages which were there. There was not a lot of online and IT support which was given to them. So all they learned was from notes which were given to them. So if you look at the total picture of how education was given out, maybe in schools which had the ability to financially support them were able to do that. But the schools which are not able to do that, did we increase the gap? Did we increase the gap more for education? This is further showing how private, public, and the private subsidized education systems which were there, whether it was colleges, whether it was schools, the education was affected. Publicly, it was not available. Obviously, private sectors did have the finances. They had kids coming in which had the finances. Wi-Fi was not that difficult for them to get. Kids, people who are coming from economically difficult, economically backward classes, some of them did not even know hotspot. And sorry to say, most of them did not have smartphone. They still have those Nokia phones with the 2 number game which is going on. So, they didn't have the Wi-Fi which was going. So their kids also had to study. So just concluding what Aisha said and putting the entire thing on a forefront as compared to the entire world, efforts were made from all levels so that the education could continue. Results, what we got in the end, looked beautiful, but they were achieved and were at a much more slower pace. Assessments, no doubt, were difficult. Cheating was a common practice which went on, because obviously results were what actually mattered. And in the end, parents, in our case, we've seen that parents were actually helping the kids to cheat so that their kids could score better. Cheating was happening, and these portals, all these online systems were actually not prepared to be foolproof. They were never, so teachers change faster, but these online portals took their time to figure out whether we can allow cheating or not. So assessments were difficult, managed, but not fair either. As I mentioned, institution which had the finances were able to do it. End result, most of the teachers pointed out, most of the teachers actually wanted to go back to offline. They were like, okay, online teaching has become more stressful as compared to the offline teaching, so we would love to go back. So eventually schools reopened, we came back, task force were created, plans were laid down, social distancing was happening. But we all know how much did these plans work, how much social distancing happened. I think it was the happiness of the educators and the learners of being able to come back and have that human touch with, for the first time in life, parents were happy to hear when the kids were saying, we want to go back to school. We want to go and meet our teachers. We want to go and shake hands with our teachers. We don't want to go to the tuition center. And that's what actually happened. Kids were very happy to come back. In fact, now when I am teaching these kids and we say, okay, Saturday, do you want to do an online class? They say, can you please make us stay back for an extra hour rather than doing an online class on Saturday? They would love to do that offline class. So, this is something we all face day to day. So obviously, when the kids came back, they had a learning gap, because even though online system was there, let's say 1% of the population which was there took the initiative and was, able to study. But what about the remaining 99%? There was a gap there. So students needed more hand holding. And I think right now we are in that academic year when we are still struggling, holding their hands, trying to make them to come back. I am a science teacher and I'm telling you, my kids haven't done practical for 2 years. Okay. And now I am making them do practical this year. Some of them have forgotten how to hold a test tube holder. They put the test tube and they put the holder and the test tube falls because they forgot to tighten the holder. It's as simple as that. Kids have not had that experience, and bringing them back to that kind of experience is not easy. So, at this time, we as institutions have to think that we have to stress on learning rather than achieving at this point. Rather than saying that my kid needs to have an A grade, let's tell them that it's okay to have B. First, understand the skill. They will eventually score in the next 2 years. So I know a lot of people might have different opinions, but that's the thing. So these are some small approaches we came up with that, as teachers, we should think. As lecturers, we should think that we have to build a positive relationship with kids. Emotional coaching. Depression has become a very important word which has come up during COVID times, whether it was because of COVID, what kids suffered during COVID, or what they actually came back with. Right now they feel overwhelmed. One of the major issues, when we used to deal with 15, 16-year-old, we used to talk about addiction problems. We are now talking about techno addiction. Parents are worried that the doors are actually closed and they're just on video games. So we are not dealing with the addiction problems, but a different kind of addiction is what we are dealing with. We are dealing with kids not leaving the computer. They don't want to go and play outside anymore. Some of them don't want to do that because now they've become comfortable in that zone of playing the video games. And to be true, they achieve a sense, they get a sense of achievement that I've won in this, which might not be there in all of them. So where do we need to change as a system here is that we need to, so whatever we gained during the pandemic, whether it was online courses, we need to incorporate those online abilities and the lesson plans which were made so that they are available to all kids. Private schools can actually tie up with public schools and government school and try and give them the material, because now we have that material. No teacher has to work extra for that. I know this is a big rational change I'm saying about, but it's not that easy for a change to come in. Trainings have to be given to teachers, even the best of the best. I'll say the PhD title and how Venki introduced me was very overwhelming in the starting, but even I needed my own trainings to be able to do that particular class. So as Aisha also pointed out, teachers never stop learning. Free the teachers from administrative work, which is a very common practice which happens in most of our schools and institutions. A lot of administrative work is put onto them, But right now, we want these teachers to actually learn more. Teachers also went through a lot of burnout. They went through a lot of socioeconomic stress, and we need that help for the teachers. We don't want teachers. In fact, one of the surprising figures which have come up by UNESCO recently is 2 months back, they have actually pointed out that there has been a sudden resignation increase. Teachers are leaving jobs right now because they have been so overwhelmed over this period of 2 years that they want to leave teaching. So, this is something that to keep our teachers back in the workforce, we need to make them feel happy. I know we are not babies, but the teachers did the babysitting for the kids. It's high time we hold the hands of the teachers too. So the next point is the same thing. Now, the good thing about the COVID which has come in is now parents were actually there in the classrooms. Most of the parents were there. They came to appreciate the teachers. Mostly in the PTMs, it was a blame game, but now they actually understood. Another good point, we as an Indian system can adapt from this, which has come up by a lot of research papers, is that most of our students who used to participate in national games or let's say state level or were district level sport players, they would actually be deprived of the basic education. Let's say the child is in a very good school. It was not easy to get the notes and everything. But now we had an online system which was set up during COVID. Why can't one of my national player who was actually, in fact, this happened with us in the school, that one of our child was actually training in London for the tennis tournament, and she's part of the national under 15 team. And she was able to take online classes sitting in London. She was not deprived of that education. So we can do that for our kids, give them, the ones who are participating, to give them that set of notes and the necessary education materials. So in the end, all I have to say is teachers have been working a lot around this. They have their three loves: the love for learning, the love for the learners, and love for bringing the learning and the learner together. But we should never forget to actually hold the hands of the children and the teachers in this post-COVID times. Leaving you guys with everyone with a very good and a quote which I've always followed. The purpose of education is not to make a good human being with, a skill set and an expertise. Enlightened human beings who can be created by teachers is what we need. We need a child who understands the basics of education and is able to contribute towards the society. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I hope I haven't gone over time. Thank you.
Not at all. That was wonderful. We still have some time left. And yes, one does realize, I think the teacher's task wasn't easy at all, post the pandemic. And you rightly mentioned March where the examination ends and you look forward to a short break before starting on the next session. But it's amazing how everybody has adapted, and hats off all the teachers to keep the education flowing and continuing, all those who have presented here on the dais, including the likes of yourself. So as they say, life is not a straight road, and if there is a bend, it's not the end of the road unless you fail to, take a turn. So I guess everybody has taken that turn, so-called proverbial turn, and done extremely well. So another one, I think I'm reminded of Horace, who had said, I think that adversity has the talent, has the effect of eliciting talents which in prosperous circumstances otherwise would have lain dormant. So I guess that's so true for humanity. Whenever you think you're at the rock bottom and suddenly, you realize that, you can actually use that as an opportunity, adversity as an opportunity inside out. So fantastic. And now I will request our chair, Dr. Tabassum Jamal, to make the concluding remarks for this session. And then we take a short little break once again to fill up our tea cups. I won't say teacups, but just cups, whatever that is. And we come back again for wrapping up the show today. I think I thought it would be a very long day, but it still feels short. Time has kind of flown by, and wish we could have more time for the speakers to continue and speak on rather than me interrupting like a cuckoo at the end of the hour coming out and saying your time is up. I've got the bad job to do, but unfortunately that's how things are. So over to you, Dr. Tabassum.
Yeah, thank you, Venkatesh. I must say that this session was very interesting session, as we have been discussing disruption of education during the COVID-19 pandemic since morning. This was the session where we just could listen the positive vibes, what actually we should talk now more, as Mrs. Anubama Ramachandra very rightly said, that how to get back to normalcy. Of course, every dark thing has some nicer thing, हर रात के बाद सवेरा है, तो शायद उसी बात को लेते हुए I will just conclude few points. As we had 5 speakers in this session, Dr. Rambu, Dr. Riaz, and Mr. Anupa Ramachandra, Pragya Verma, and Aisha, I must congratulate you all for presenting your thoughts in such a way that we have got really insight that what has been happening as far as the school part is concerned, and it was not an easy task, that how the teachers have got this burden, because the transit time was so less. The lockdown started just in March, and April was the time when the new classes were to be on. So just to start with Dr. Rambuj, who is a great academician and a researcher, and we have been working together for last many years. I understand his association with UNESCO also. He very diligently said that how we should think about the digital economy in the coming times, as all the UN agencies have also emphasize that how the COVID education disruption during the COVID-19 have made it really to cope with the situation. So what he exactly said, that the post-COVID education must address these points, like first of all, that every child has a right to education, and then the digital economy will make it possible. And then if we think so, then what are the job scenarios, what are going to be in the coming time? And second thing important, he mentioned that during this time, what we have learned, that we should not go by what the way in conventional way we were doing in our education system, but now the education should be liberal, so that we can cover all the learning aspect rather than just the covering of syllabus and curriculum. So the third point was the digital devices, because all the rural and urban areas, wherever this problem was there, so it was not that everybody was having these digital devices and these smartphones, and of course the Wi-Fi connectivity also. So a digital divide was of course very obvious, but then how to cope with that was basically the initiatives from the state governments and from the teachers, that they could come up with some new learning innovative methods, where the massive online optical courses were opted, and there were many other mechanisms through which this learning got continued. First of all, just we think that if this kind of lockdowns over the across the globe happened, that education might have been just at the halt, but no, because there was a drive from people, there was a drive from researchers, there was a drive from technocrats, that how to bring the technological role, how to bring the education back, through these modalities. Then we had Dr. Riaz, and I'm so happy, and I must thank to him that he is with us since morning, giving his time and listening everybody, and then presented his own presentation in a very positive way. I mean, he just painted a very positive picture that we have the eyes in front of our face, so we should always have a positivity in our mind. So keeping aside what COVID has done to our lives, I think we should move on, and we should, this loss of learning hours, how much we had in last 2 years, that should not stop us to think more that how fast and how further we can go in our education, because the internet and mobile connectivity, as other countries are concerned, it was much better, but as far as India and other small countries are concerned, it was not that good. But still there was a kind of trial and effort where most of the schools could really build up this gap. As he rightly said, that there should be a kind of learning environment, after this COVID-19, what lessons we have learned from the hardships. But I think if we initiate or if we just give some kind of sense to our students that empowering the learners. So that point I really like what Dr. Riaz has mentioned in his lecture, that despite having all odds in COVID-19, if now coming back to normalcy, we can say that how we can just institutionalize that empowerment to our learners, that how they should take the self-responsibility to take the education. And that learning environment will be made only with the efforts of the teachers and of other stakeholders which are who are very active in this community. Then further he said that we should recognize the capability of a student also. It is not that, one simple lecture will help all the students, but if at all we give some kind of, time and attention to every child, that what a child passion is and how we can really drive that passion, that will help us to make that student more learner in a good manner. He also mentioned that we should make feel the students that they should feel free to participate, like, because generally in our school system, in our traditional system, we don't allow children to ask many more questions or to ask, to pose problems. But I think the time has come when we should promote our children that they should pose questions, and that will create the creativity in them. Then only some kind of learning environment, what we talk about, that can be created. So I like these few ideas from Dr. Riaz, from your lecture, that you have given a kind of, that ignite, that the students should be given that freedom to speak in the class, to express themselves, and to initiate their creativity. And at the same time, the teachers also should give that space to children, that they should catch the passion in the children, that what, ability and what kind of special attention these children have, which can be promoted with the given efforts. uh, uh, then Dr. Riaz also just shown the graph where he said that it's a cycle, that how the teachers can create the creativity in students, and the students then share it with peers. So basically, it is a time to collaborate and to respond to our, and to design such a course where teachers, students, and peers, they can group in a very collaborative mode, so that the teaching curve or the learning curve should go ahead. Coming to Dr. Anupama Ramachandra, and here I really feel glad that we were very fortunate to have 3 teachers with us, because without the teachers, how can we conclude this kind of, debate where we are talking that. Okay. So these 3 teachers, Dr. Anupama Ramachandra, she just, opened our eyes that how the role of educators can be assessed of this time, because every time we were talking about the health workers and other people who were striving hard to cope with the COVID-19. But I think the education sector was one which was badly affected in these last 2 years. And then she very rightly said that it is not just that these 2 years, but when we are coming back to normalcy, when the children are coming back to school, how can we just ensure that what they have learned, because the kind of situations everyone has gone through in these 2 years, it is not very easy to say, be it for personal reason or financial reasons, that how much this learning, whatever was tried, had made an impact on the learning curve. And she very categorically says that to bridge the gap, basically we have to think that schools, I mean, when they are back, the students are back, the schools are not running in the full speed, because the children, they are not in their full capacity, because they had kind of shocks, all this time. They were not having good environment at home, and they were not having that sustainable kind of a thing what they used to have, and human touch was just absent. So it was basically a lot of topsy-turvy for all the students to come back to the learning atmosphere. So it is not easy that, one should always give these students again back to the learning sessions. And there were so many other techniques through which the teachers, they were showing their ability. And because teachers were also getting the as Pragya and Aisha, they both very beautifully described that how difficult it was to cope with the system. And because it was not, they were not ready for this kind of transition, but morning they were having the classes, online classes, and evening they were getting training for online, that how they will do the assessment and other things. So it has been a very difficult journey for the teachers, how to adopt and how to cope with the system. But I think I should thank, and I have a big salute to all the teachers who they have provided this kind of necessity, and they learned in very short time these devices, and they have given the right kind of education to our students. And now again, when they are back to the classes, so they are trying to give them that positiveness in their class and how to come back to the normalcy after the COVID-19. So I think this session was very useful, as we had this brainstorming that what has happened last 2 years, how the education got disrupted in the last 2 years, but how we have tackled the situation, that is also very important to discuss. And this brainstorming, I think, will surely will bring up some kind of recommendations or some kind of solutions, where we can see that it's not just this time, but if at all in future times some kind of disruption comes, how are we ready to handle this kind of a situation? And of course, as Pragya, you have mentioned that the policymakers should also discuss this point, that what kind of policies should enable the teachers for more learning and for more better training. So I think now this new education policy also talks about more for not just for the having the covering the syllabus and curricula, but it is just basically to have the learning attitude, that how you learn whatever you are learning, whatever you are studying in the class. It is not just mugging, it is not just passing out or getting grades or getting the marks. It is basically that how far you are learning that methods through which you will be applying that knowledge to your life. So I think that is the lesson what we have got from this new normal, when we talk about the new education parameters, also in having all these ICT, information and communication technological interventions in our education system, that we should be really focusing how we can make our students ready, that they should be utilizing their time. And of course, they have to be with their laptops or with their smartphones or with the screen, but they have to have some time for their physical education also. So with that, I think I will end up the session. And yes, there are.
So we do have a few questions, but we could even take a break and keep that for the concluding session, as you advise. We could do that. So
it is okay. Yeah.
We can take the questions after the break, if at all we have some more.
Yeah, so we could do that. So I think we've kind of covered up and taken off on a bullet train. So we are a little ahead of schedule on this one. So we'll take a 15-minute break, probably make it 20. So we'll come back at 4:30 p.m. IST, which is 20 minutes from now, and for the concluding session.
Venki,
and we can take on the questions then.
Venki, you did not calculate the time properly. You gave 10 minutes each. There are only four candidates to deliver 2 hours. That was the mistake. You just
I think after the mathematics chair left, I think the maths went for a toss. So maybe it's time to go back to school again.
Yeah.
So if anybody else would like to make some remarks here, so we have 10 minutes time. We can do that. Dr. Riaz or Dr. Zaheer?
Yes, okay. But really, all the speakers, what they have spoken, some of them were theoretical, but majority of them, they were talking about their own practices. This is one of the most important things. The book says something, but when we really practice, this is more valuable, more important. I was really amazed by listening by listening to Dr. Anupama and Dr. Aisha and Ramanga. They were really, they have done a lot of research and they have been really keen observer to the process, what is going on. So they have already gone through this, all these problems, and they have spoken out clearly. So whatever their suggestion was, that was really important. Actually, the thing is what, just 1 minute I would like to say. Like the problems, negativity is natural. Negativity is natural. Why? When your son go out, why do you say take care? Nothing happened, right? He's matured enough. He's matured enough, but you still say him take care, because you know that the negativity part is always there. So we have to always, God has created earth. Why he didn't make it smooth? He make it rough. Why? Just you do not fall down, there is obstruction. So the negative will keep going on and continuing on. What we have to do is to negate the negativity. We cannot create positivity. We have to negate the negativity, positivity will automatically come. So we just do the opposite. So, and the Newton said the same thing. To every action, there is equal and opposite reactions. So what we have lost, we have to negate it. To feel that, to feel it a positive way. And this is what is going on. So now what I suggested, in fact, the learning management system in empowerment, I would like to add a little bit more because I was in a hurry, I didn't say. This can happen in classroom also, because the active learning process is most important. We are used to the lecture methods. The students are just listeners and the teacher keeps saying, we don't let them participate and cooperate. In the digital media, digital era, you cannot do that one. So there is always problem for the teacher to a discipline problem, students interest and attention problems, there are always. But if you just change the activity-based learning system, then all these will be controlled. You made the student responsible for that. For example, you give them, as you pointed out, Philip learning. Okay, you send the question for Philip learning. The teacher will come and will start explaining, and he should say what? He should do the opposite. He should do the wrong thing. Let the teacher recognize whether he has studied or not. He said him that I will come study with the gravity. And the teacher start, okay, study, we were studying, given you the note, equations of motion. Then it will be understood that the students have studied or not. They will immediately point you out. And since they started participating, take the advantage and give them task. Okay, so you have done this very good. So take this question and try to answer. Okay, you are not able to do that? Make a pair, discuss with this, make them round table, let them discuss. And then after 5 minutes, 10 minutes time, you ask them, okay, what is the answer of this? One of the group person will say, then if he's right, okay, then you will ask each and everyone, did the other people also understand? Then they will say, they will be actively listening to you. Okay, so this is called think, peer, and share. The student will first think, then discuss with the peer, and then it will share. This is one of the important method of developing active learning process. And without that, you will always have a discipline problem. There will be diversion of mind. You cannot be able to create interest and attentions, and student will not take the responsibility of their learnings. Sometime it can happen. Teacher will be given task to teach. Teacher will be sitting on the with the students, and then he will feel empowered that, okay, I am teaching this one. Then if they goes wrong, he will come forward and explain. Actually, he meant like this to adjust the problem. So everybody will feel like I will also can go and teach. So they will take their own responsibility, and they will be learning by themselves. And this is very important. The 21st century requirement is completely different. It is problem solving. When you go to him for employability, the employer will not ask you what is your education. He will ask you, how can you solve this problem? And this is going to be, you should know, you should be aware that mathematics subject is going to be changed completely. For the data science and all that, they are designed so many things. Mathematical writing is a course. So it's a lot of demanding things. We should, all the educators must think about how to create a 21st century skill among the students. And this can be done. It's not that. India is very rich population of educators. And what I have been listening, I was really amazed because I have the first interaction with the professors in India. I'm living here in Dubai for the last 25 years. So I didn't have these interactions. But when I listened to them, I was really amazed that they are really thorough, theoretical, practical, everything, learned researchers. I'm really very happy to be a part of this program. Okay, so if anybody wants to ask me a question, I'm ready to answer. But this is what I feel that we must have to use our eyes. Why God has put our eyes at the forefront. Okay, if you keep looking forward, you will not fall down. So you must be prepared for that. It talks a lot about God has created human being perfectly well for perfect requirement. Okay, so we must be doing this. I think I have made enough for the listener. Okay, so if you have any question, I can be able to answer. Venki, over to Venki.
Well, just on that, I think since we have the time, if anybody else wants to make any point, we can do that. And it's a little off topic, but I think that's something, since I have a lot of interest in wellness overall, and we have been trying to promote our Healthy Ram platform, healthyram.com, which I spoke about earlier. So what I normally do with all the sessions and the shows that I host or moderate, and this was very true for what I used to do, physical events and others, is something pretty simple. And this is something that could be done. I've done this with the students as well. Is very simple, are just the mudras, which I'm sure all of us know about. You come down to T3 International Airport, you have all these mudras on the wall, hand gestures, or even otherwise, if you see all the spiritual saints and everybody, they are all sitting in a mudra, which is the Dhyan Mudra or the Gyan Mudra, right? So this is something which we spoke about mental health and everything. So very easy to do. You can do them anytime, anywhere. And the hand gestures or the mudras have a lot of benefits, which can be done. You don't need to step out. You could be sitting watching TV. You could be traveling in the bus. Yes, you should not do it if you are driving yourself. Of course, it could be dangerous. But apart from that, if you just do these exercises, and even the students do them, it'll really be beneficial. So the Dhyan Mudra, the Gyan Mudra helps you to focus. So in fact, I've done some sessions, with the students in some schools, and before the examinations or even otherwise, they're all addicted to, I won't say all, but most of them are on the devices most of the time. Very difficult to get them off. So to help them focus, to help them be grounded, they could do the Dhyan Mudra, the Gyan Mudra, which is the thumb to the very, very simple, I don't think I even need to explain it, the thumb touching the index finger and the other three fingers extended. So this just operates and closes circuitry within our body, right? So just like all living organisms and others, you have circuits everywhere. In the machines, you have circuits. Your body is one of the most complex machines, and which could be set right by simply directing the current flow or balancing those energies within your body. The other one is the the Prana Mudra, which is simple. You take both your fingers. This is like firing the gun. If you have seen this typical, Hollywood songs where they keep talking about, I think one of the songs, I won't mention the song, but anyway. So this is your little finger and your ring finger and your thumb together, and your index and the middle finger extended. So this is the Prana Mudra. I hope you can see it, and the audience can see it. So this is something that is kind of invigorates or brings about, the prana in the body, which is the life force energy. So if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling And this, of course, applies to students and to anybody, even teachers, of course. So you can actually do this mudra, the Prana Mudra, to help, re-energize yourself. Right. So after you've had a meal, typically even in the webinars, when we do, so when we take a break, I normally ask everybody to just focus, sit down, take a few deep breaths, focus on your energy, on your breath, and do the Prana Mudra. And suddenly you will realize, try it now, try it for a minute, and you'll see the difference that your eyes will actually, if your shutters are going down, they'll start opening up. You'll feel energized. So after a meal, you're tired, anytime you could do this. So there are a whole lot of more of them. I think we still have a few minutes, but please feel free to interrupt me. I'm just talking for the sake of talking and sharing something which I feel is, might be useful for a few or everybody. And the other mudra post the pandemic, of course, we Indians, or rather in the subcontinent, are very prone to blood pressure, diabetes, and heart ailments. Unfortunately, we call it genetic or predisposition or whatever it is. But then there is also a mudra, which is a combination of the Prana Mudra and the Vayu Mudra, which is the Apana Vayu Mudra. So which essentially you take your the index finger to the base of the thumb, and your middle and ring finger joined, and your little finger, the pinky, extended. So I'll do that again. Your index finger to the base of the thumb, your middle and ring finger joined to the thumb again, right? So I think if you can see it in the camera, and the little finger extended. Do this with both the hands. Initially it is a little difficult if you're not used to holding these postures, right? So this is as good as putting a sorbitrate under your tongue, and for those, this helps strengthen the heart, and helps you, can potentially, so you need to do them for 10 minutes a day, and if you're unwell, you can do them for about 45 minutes, 10-15 minutes each, spread across whichever way you want to do it. So very simple. You can just do this, be sitting, and while I'm sitting here and not doing anything, I'm just sitting in one of the mudras as and when I can. And it's very simple to actually, you have health in your hands. So right, so I think these should also be part of the course and the curriculum, which is very simple. It's not related to any religion, nothing. These are just hand gestures, which Bharatanatyam and other Indian forms of dances use a lot of that. So I think we have some questions, or sorry, somebody wants to speak. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Okay, just somebody. Yes, okay, come for it.
Yeah, so Mr. Venkatesh, I just wanted to add, I had chosen to speak about the role of educators in coping up with the gaps that have resulted due to the pandemic. I would just like to draw everybody's attention here that, we are focusing on how, what is the role of the educator in helping the students, helping the parents, helping the school management and everyone. I just always ask this question that as a school, as administrators, do we have we had the time to ask our teachers how they are feeling when they've come back after 2 years of the pandemic? And like I said, things were really tough for teachers across the country. Some of them had to work with reduced salaries, with very limited resources, with limited spaces. But now that they've come back, like Dr. Pragya rightly pointed out, the situation has been so overwhelming because they are not expected to teach something that they were doing pre-pandemic, the curriculum. This is not what is actually being expected of teachers these days. Teachers have always been known for their multitasking abilities, but now the multitasking is going beyond the school hours. right? Because now we have discovered that they can work even when they're at home. Generally, it was like at the end of the school day, they wind up everything. Maybe they have to stay back for an hour, but they finish and then they go home and they come back the next day. But now it is not like that. We are expecting that parent-teacher meetings will happen beyond school hours. They will do the scaffolding for children with special needs after they go home. Then we are asking them that you have already learned how to use digital tools. Now, why don't you use it for, continue to use it for assessments? So we have to somewhere realize that are we making the teachers burn at both ends? Are we able to help them balance professional and personal lives? Are we giving them time to take care of their family? Although we are asking them that you do pursue your hobbies, give time to take care of yourselves, we have to look whether we are actually making time for them, or are we expecting that they should work almost for the entire day and through the night also. So it is very important for us to be a little more sensitive about the fact that teachers are the ones who actually can run the programs at school, irrespective of how the infrastructure is, how strong the policies are. Whatever it is, at the end of the day, if the system is successful, it is only because of the intrinsic motivation that teachers have. So only if teachers make up their mind, they can make anything work, irrespective of whether we have resources, we have technology, we have the right kind of parents, we have the right students. Whatever it is, if we have a set of motivated teachers, anything can work. So, I would like for all of us to draw our attention on how we can help our teachers as administrators, as policymakers, like many of the other fellow panelists have said, that how can we make life easy for our teachers also, so that they are happy, basically happy, and they create happy classrooms. So that is what I would like to submit.
Can I answer this?
Please, go ahead.
Now, as we know that the education system has moved into the hand of the corporate world. And corporate world, they have only one goal. They must get profit proportionate to their investment. So when a corporate makes such a building, usually it should have happened that you invest now and you will get benefit after 10 years. This is what it used to be before. But nowadays, corporate world, they invest now, want to get profit right now. Previously, there used to be clerk, there used to be attendant. There were so many office staff in a school. But now, a teacher has to do what? Teacher has to teach his course. Teacher has to do some administrative works. Teacher has to answer to the parent also. Teacher has to do the moderation, the curriculum buildings. She has to go to the professional development. All because the education system is handled by corporate world. Corporate world always want to reduce the sizes, okay, of the teachers to get more output. There is no limit, no benchmark for how many courses that a teacher will teach and how much is paid. There is nothing like that in the corporate world. But has it been a government system? Then the people have really enjoyed, okay, because they have a course. But at the same time, and before also there has been some issue. But corporate, this is the problem with the corporate world. Teachers are always at the receiving end. Parents come and shout at them. Administration come and shout them. Students are angry with them. They are targeted from all the sides. So when you are going to take up the teaching profession, then you have to keep this in mind, that all the bullet will come towards you. You should know how to return them. So that is the cultural problem of the what is existing now, every part of the world, not only in India, where there is a corporate world. They talk about too many good things, okay, they will distribute some money to the poor and all that, but they will not distribute the bonus to the teachers who are already working. So they want to highlight and come into the picture, post their picture giving money to the poor, okay? But they will not ask about sending a letter to the teacher whose children are suffering, and they are not going to do all these things. So problem lies not in the teaching, problem lies the corporatization of the educational system. This is what I have, this is my experience of my 35 years of teaching. I have taught in the government aided school, I have taught in private schools, I have now in university. Also, I have done some administrative service. I have worked in a factory, I have worked in railway, everywhere. I see the teacher is mostly at the receiving end. The result is not good, not because of the teacher alone. But nobody takes, there is so many things behind the scene. But who will be blamed? The result, teacher. So what I'm thinking that the claim of the teacher, a problem with the teacher or the voice they want to raise, I think you keep on raising, sometimes it will be hard, but I don't know when. So this is what I wanted to share, but be patient. You are the one who should observe 100% patience. Okay, so you are supposed to be an ideal person. The teacher should be ideal. Okay, so you should not be asking more money. You should not be asking that I want to go, give me some extra money in advance. Nothing. And why this is happening? The demand exceeds, supply is more than the demand. If you don't want to work, there is other to take place. What you will do? So why I will tell you one thing only, the one thing, thumb rule. Either rule or get ruled. There is no other method. There's no other method. If you can dictate, then okay. If you cannot dictate, listen. And try to go other places where you find that you will get some respect, honor, and every facility. Teaching process is going to happen like this. They will buy a lot of things, so many decorations, paintings, everything. But if you become sick, they will call you not to see how you are. They want to check that whether you are coming tomorrow or not. So they will call you, they will talk to you, but not with the vision to think about you, but to know that whether you are coming tomorrow or not. So this is the reality. Let us be realistic and try to adjust, because they will tell you education is adjustment.
All right. So with that, I'm sorry to interrupt there, but we would need to take a break as we were almost there on time, but then we've just overshot the finish line with some very interesting conversations, of course. So well utilized time there.